Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the segment of Code Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation today is from Jaitsari Mahalla Panjwa, composition of the fifth Nanak, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, and the recitation first. Jaitsari Mahalla Panjwa, Man meh Satgur Dhyan Dhara, दृढ़यो ज्ञान मंत्र हर नामा प्रभ जियो मया करा रहाओ काल जाल अर महाजंजाला छुटके जमै डरा आयो दुख हरण शरण करुणापत गहयो चरण आसरा नाव रूप भयो साध संग भवनिद पार परा अपयो पियो गत थियो बर्मा को नानकी अजर jara. So the first verse is the rahao, which is the pivot. It says, Man meh Satgur dhyan tara. Man meh, within the mind, I focused or I contemplated the Satgur, dhyan tara, my attention turned to the Satgur. Dridyo Gyan Mantra Harinama. And from the Satgur, the mantra, the wisdom of divine presence took root. Harinama. Jio Maya Kara. Grace. So while I focused my attention on the teachings of the Satgur, grace is what happened when that wisdom took root. In other words, when I anchored in that wisdom. So the Guru is not sought outside. It is man meh. Within the mind itself is where one's focus has to go. And it has to be dridyo, firmly rooted, implanted. It's not a passing thought. But grace, still dependent on grace. So the focus on the Satgur as just inside is perhaps a bit too abstract for the mind to grasp. So how do you focus on the Satgur? The Satgur is sabad. And where is the sabad for us? It is the text that I'm reading from, Gurbani. That is the sabad where the mind has to begin. Because the Satgur as a knowledge principle is too abstract for the mind to begin to understand. So you begin with the sabad that you can read, that you can repeat, that you can sit with, that you can turn over in the mind. So this sabad, the text, the Gurbani that I'm reading out to you, is the entry point precisely because it is graspable. And you have to engage with this sabad in a sustained way. And then it will also reveal itself. So you see, when you engage with this sabad on a daily basis, when you sit with it, when you reflect on it, when you contemplate it, guess what happens? It begins to speak to you. It begins to open up your mind. So the text is the door. You don't have to focus on the door forever, but you have to go through it. So the rooting, dridyo, happens because you're engaging with the sabad in a repeated, sustained way. Not just a single reading, but a dwelling. So that is what is being implied here. And further down, the Guru says, Kal Jal Ar Maha Janjala. Kal Jal, the web of time. Maha Janjala, this is the great entanglement. Chutke hai, chutke. Kal Jal Kar Maha Janjala Chutke. Chutke means to be freed of. Jam hai dara. So chutke is used both for the janjal and jam. Jam here, fear of death. My entanglements were broken as a result of engaging with the Satgur. Ayo dukh haran saran karunapat gayo charan asara. So it's important. This line is actually expanding on the Rahau. When I engaged with the Satgur in a sustained way, what happened? Kal jal ar maha janjala chutke. The fear of death that I had fell away. Ayo dukha haran saran karunapat. Har is the snatcher of my dukh, dukh haran. I came into the refuge of the Karunapat, the compassionate Har, and its wisdom became my support. So the entanglements of fear of death and the world are not fought. They simply fall away. Chutke is a sense of release when something else is grasped. I grasp at the shelter of wisdom. So it's not as if you're engaged in some battle. You're simply clearing the way. So you let the Shabad take root in your mind. And that is how knowledge gradually displaces fear. Because fear of death is essentially the mind's terror of its own dissolution, clinging of a self that believes itself to be separate, bounded. And that's the terror. When you begin to understand the Shabad, you don't grip on to anything you don't grasp it anymore. There is release in there. There is a loosening of the grip. Chutke. And in conclusion, Nama Rupa Bhayo Sad Sangha. Nava Roop. Here Nav is a boat. It also is the quality of that wisdom. That wisdom gives you virtue. So virtue becomes the boat. Nava Rupa Bhayo Sad Sangha. What was that boat? It was Sad Sangha. The Guru. The presence of the Guru. Bhavanad Par Para. That is what carried me across this terrifying ocean of fear within my mind. The ocean of fear is within your mind. And apyo pio gatathiyo. Apyo pio. Apyo is nectar. Drinking of the nectar. Pio. Gatathiyo. Movement happened. Parma kahu nanak ajar jara. I was able then to bear the unbearable. I had the strength, the experience of the self. Now this is the apyo pio is exactly the nectar of the Sabad. I drank the nectar of the Sabad, apyo pio. So the Sabad is the nectar itself. When you internalize it, when it roots in the mind, it becomes the Amrit. Apyo means that which cannot be drunk enough of, inexhaustible. So it means that you have anchored into inexhaustible wisdom. So, in sum, the instruction in the Rahau is Internalize the Shabad. Let it take root in your mind. And then you will see the consequence. The nets of entanglement will gradually fall away. The fear of death will release from your mind. And you will find yourself at the feet of compassion. And then, in conclusion, what you will realize is that it is precisely this Shabad that was the boat that you traveled on. It was the nectar that you were drinking all along. That is the clue. The Shabad is not simply a pointer, it is the thing itself. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.